Boom! Hello and welcome to the Executive Protection Lifestyle Podcast Season 5. Never forget that to the best of us, protection's more than just a job. It really is a lifestyle. Enjoy. Boom! What's up, you guys? Byron Rodgers here with another episode of the Executive Protection Lifestyle Podcast. I'm here with the legendary Todd Fox of Tour Protection. How you doing, sir? It's an honor.
Good, buddy. How are you?
I'm good, man. This is gonna be exciting, man. You've done so much.
I'm a lucky guy. It's good to be lucky.
Yeah, good to go. Nah, man. I mean, 4 going on 5 books, 148 countries at the time of this document I'm looking at.
Yes, sir.
25 years in the game. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to dig into some stuff, and we're gonna go on ahead and learn quite a bit from Todd. And then I got an amazing recommendation from
Ryan. Ryan is who you're talking about.
Ryan, yeah. Okay, solid. Yeah, Ryan, who was also on the podcast. Solid dude. He's been awesome, man. He's been a good friend and another solid guy out there in the game. So definitely looking forward to getting into this, man. I mean, it almost blows my mind that I just found your stuff. You've been doing this for 25 years, but who's the man behind the work, man? Who are you at your core? That's always my opening.
Well, let me go back a second to address what you just said. For 23 years, we were almost invisible by design, and then COVID happened, and then we started talking more about what we do and how we do it and all that stuff. So there's a very good reason we didn't really want to be known, and then even with training, it was word of mouth. So things have changed, and so anyway. I think we have a lot of the similar kind of background. Marine Corps first, and then from Marine Corps into private security, at the same time fighting in no holds barred at the time, which is now called MMA, jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai and kickboxing, all that kind of stuff. And then law enforcement on a SWAT team out of St. Louis. And then staying with all the same themes and bouncing around while my guys kind of did their business. And here we are.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome, man. Amazing background. But as a person, who's Todd? You know what I'm saying? Who's the man behind the awesomeness?
Well, I came from the Midwest, so you can't really take that out of me. And I grew up in a city, and then I moved from the city to the county, and the county to the country. As I gained more experience, I decided I didn't want to be in the city. But I don't think you can take that out of a person. And so I'm very Midwestern, and I grew up, and I can't speak to you, but one of the things for me was to kind of get away, to have this adventure. And I was into fitness, and I was into shooting, and I loved traveling. And the Marine Corps was like, I don't think there's a better thing for a young guy who wants those particular things. So when I saw that was available to me, and I wasn't ready to go to college at that point, I was just like, oh, this is it. And that spoke to me. It still does, man. 50 years old, and I'm still motivated by, fighting and shooting and driving and traveling and learning new stuff and going to new places. And I'm still passionate about that. So, I identify myself by those things and being driven, man, just being motivated to learn. I don't think I'm anywhere near where I need to be in jiu-jitsu or any type of fighting, in knowledge with respect to security or travel or languages or cultural knowledge. Mm-hmm. So I'm super driven. Yeah.
No, you have the accolades of for sure. What would you say if there was a key? I mean, you said you're 50 and you've done a lot of things. Is there any kind of key or a few values or maybe even tactics you've used over the years to just stay the course, to stay in this game, and not get hit by any of the roadblocks or landmines that wipe dudes out,
Yeah, there are a lot of those, but in my case, I tried to learn my craft. I tried to learn what it was I was doing, but at the same time, learn the guy's job above me, right? Tried to figure out what he was doing and how he was doing it. And then just like you would in the Marine Corps and law enforcement, you have good leaders, good mentors, and then you have guys that are not capable of being mentors, and they try to be mentors. And I tried to pick up the good stuff and kind of get rid of the bad stuff. But not only that, I burnt the candle at both ends. And I hear a lot of people now talking about don't do that. But, the only way that I was able to train jiu-jitsu, be in the Marine Corps, write a book, travel to all these countries is from burning it at both ends. And, that's the only way you're going to get 2 or 3 lifetimes done in one lifetime.
Yeah.
So that was always huge for me. And then in terms of the opposing side of it, like you're asking what people shouldn't do, in my estimate, because 80% of our business is entertainment, it's to realize you're not the entertainer. You're not the celebrity. It's not about you. You are a service provider. You are the help. And there are a lot of guys that are confused about that in this day and age. They think they're the celebrity, they're the star. And not only does their bank account not reflect that, but like their capabilities, their power, their longevity, it's not the same. And so if you mistake that, you lose on all fronts.
Yeah. And I think that's a huge pitfall when guys start, trying to roll the client at a certain level. And I say the same thing, just in case some of y'all are out there being sensitive. You're the help. We're the help. Like, don't get it twisted. Nannies, butlers, drivers, PAs, we are one other type of help. And you really, if you're a gangster, you learn how to work with those auxiliary teammates, like the social dynamics. You make those, you get those guys on the payroll. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're trading cigarettes and Skittles for favors with those guys. You're getting things done.
Yeah. I mean, so you're touching on one component that's really, really important in our realm, which is personality profiles, like knowing who you're working with, knowing how they think, knowing how they make decisions, knowing how they operate. And that gives you a window into how you're going to do business with them. And, you can't motivate somebody by something they're not motivated by. So I have to first know how you think and how you behave and how you make those decisions. So watching instead of talking, that was another lesson. Like, don't give away too much information, do your thing. And then figuring out what motivates people. And it's different. It's different not only with personality types, but also in countries and within regions and, even cities to countryside, very different. In fact, I was talking to somebody else about this the other day, but these things go a long way. Or something like this, right? Like, guys will go nuts to get one of those things, and it opens gates, and all of a sudden I can't get on the tarmac, and the guy that is running it is a military guy. And after a few minutes of talking, I kind of figure some stuff out. Like, hey man, I got some stuff for you. I want to give you this is my background, I really respect what you do. And then 5 minutes later, our vehicle's on the tarmac. Exactly.
Oh, that's the key. And it's with a little bit of understanding, it can be done. But I think also what you're saying too is, man, like, you listen. Like, it's not about us. Ask those questions and then listen and let them run, man, and let them expose themselves, and and make sure you're not making an adversarial type situation, and keep the egos out of communication. Because if you at that level, with those patches and badges and things we bring, can validate the dude on the tarmac. You know what I mean? Like, and this is like a way that we roll. That's just, you don't think about it. You want to make sure your ego is arranged so that you're constantly trying to validate the people around you so that you guys can get on the same team. So they're disarmed, man. That's a whole nother topic that is really pretty critical, because there are some really important things that come from, and positive things that come from having an ego. And, from the Marine Corps, from law enforcement, fighting, there's a lot of value. But if you're not able to adjust it, to check it, to modify it, to reduce the signature of it, you're going to suffer for it. So there's a place and time for it, just like violence or any other component. Yeah, no, I feel like the ego gets a bad rap, and I tell my guys on my teams, like, yo, check it out. We have a healthy ego here. We take pride in certain things. We take pride in being able to make adjustments. We take pride in being able to listen, understand, and implement. Like, we take pride in our work product, like in the jersey you have on. Take pride in representing your company, your client, yourself. And those things just got to be managed, man. Otherwise, pride comes before a fall. That's the good stuff.
Yeah, yeah, it can hurt you or it can help you. It's kind of like, drugs and medication. If you're taking it at the wrong time or the wrong stuff, it's going to hurt you. You take it another time, it saves your life.
100%, man. No, I love it.
Boom. If you've been enjoying the podcast, I want to encourage you to come and train with me. Train with us, the League of Executive Protection Specialists. We offer online courses so you can train and learn how to take your executive protection career to the next level from the comfort of your own home. We offer on-ground training on everything from the hard skills of driving, shooting, medical, and into the soft skills through the Executive Protection Immersion course, which is one of the most experiential, learning-centric courses in the executive protection industry. Either way, I want you to become part of the golden standard in the private security industry and join the brotherhood, the League of Executive Protection Specialists. Go to epspecialist.com and let's do our careers together. I'll see you there. Out.
So what would you say real quick was your biggest takeaway from like fighting in the cage? You know, like I feel like these things make us who we are.
Probably for me, what it did is change the way I process things mentally in terms of emotions and feelings. Because I always got nerves, walking to the ring, walking to the cage. And I realized it was just part of the process and it was a good thing. And I knew, okay, I get to this point, like X amount of time before the fight, I'm going to start feeling this way and I'm going to start looking at things a certain way. And I may even question things. Am I ready? Or should I be doing this? Is this the right time? Is this guy, how's this work out for me? I found that I really wanted to not just win for me, but like to show my team, like this is who we are, this is what we're about. And I was worried about letting them down. And I found that there's this process that you go through. And if you do it enough, you figure this out, right? Which is like, I'm going to feel this way at this time. And here's how I offset it by what I eat, what I drink, who I talk to, what I talk about, and acknowledge it. Say, okay, it's going to be a feeling, but it's a fleeting feeling. It's going to come and it's going to go. And I'm going to use these breathing techniques. I'm going to talk to these guys who've been there and done that before. And I'm going to do these things. And through, the mental management side of it, you're able to overcome anything. And so that was probably the biggest thing I took from fighting. And I'm still competing in jiu-jitsu. So even when I go and I'm competing on a national or an international event in the black belt category, I have a lot of people that have expectations and I have to manage their expectation. And then I have to deal with the emotions, pre-fight jitters and stuff like that. Still to this day, with a bunch of stripes on my black belt, it doesn't matter. It's going to happen. I acknowledge it's going to happen. And then I just manage it. It's part of the process.
Yep. No, I love it, man. So what I hear you saying is like emotional intelligence, being such a high quality intelligence, but like the script, like the story that you're telling yourself and the way the tools you're using is like where you're directing your focus. Like I'm going to interact with people that are going to continue a dialogue that's going to give me power. I'm going to focus on things that are going to give me power. I'm going to observe what I'm experiencing in almost an impartial way and understand that this is part of the process. That understanding changes the way that the emotions impact you, like this is really valuable stuff, you guys, for working through anything. You might have nerves because you're about to sit with a client, see a new client, work an old client. You should be, sharp when you get ready to work that old client, but these are some pretty awesome tools to help manage all that stuff, man. That's solid.
Yeah, absolutely. It's life-changing because it affects the way you see things. And when it affects the way you see things, if you can adjust it in a positive light, everything's possible. Anything is possible. It's the way to go.
100%. How would you describe touring? Like this has kind of been your bread and butter. It sounds like, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's about 80-ish% of our income for the company is music touring.
Outstanding.
So probably, if you think about the Marine Corps and you think about doing a workup for something and you think about, getting ready and prepping and doing whatever it is your skills are, and then you have a team of people that are doing that with you. So they have to do that for touring. So before we go out on the road, we have to figure out first, who are we dealing with, right? We get a profile on the artist. We get a profile on the fan base. Who are the key players in the realm? So we're dealing with managers. We're dealing with agents. We're dealing with tour managers, production managers, accountants, lawyers, people like that. So who are all these people? How does it all fit together? What is the end objective of an artist for a specific tour? What do they want to do? They want to play theaters as a promotional kind of run where they're selling 3,000 tickets, but they know they can sell 30,000 tickets, but they drive up that demand and the hype, and then they come back and do the stadium later. What are we dealing with there? Are we dealing with the person that's talking about politics and religion? That's a problem. Are we dealing with a person that is bringing a bunch of young kids and there's some tone to it that maybe is not super healthy, like it's a sexual tone, but yet kids are coming to it? What are they going to put on poster boards and how they're going to interact with the kids? So we figure out what we got, and we figure out what the demographic is, and we figure out what the past history is with that particular group at previous shows, what the stalker profiles are like, what the existing lawsuits are like, and we devise a plan, right? And that plan basically addresses all of those areas, and then we get a budget and we fit that plan into that budget, and then it gets into kind of day-to-day application. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. What would you say to guys that want to get into that aspect and want to serve that client demographic?
I would say starting kind of on the local level is a good way to see it from a distance. So if they worked for a local company for a few months, a CSC, a staff pro kind of vibe, they saw it from that side. They learned, okay, this is, an access point. This is blow through barricade. This is bike rack. That's a truss. This is upstage, downstage. They learned the vernacular. They learned kind of how things work, how people come and go, how the day is broken down. And then if they start to learn the inside part of it, like how supervisors do things or how, the money's distributed and where the liability is at, and then the other things, the ancillary things, medics, police, fire, stuff like that, certain codes in that building or structure. And then once they do that and they get a good feel for that, they should start volunteering. If they find a tour security guy that comes through that they like and they build rapport with, say, hey man, I'm willing to work for free. I'll come out there and I'll do some OJT with you, and I'll support you. And then when they're in that market again, maybe it's regional and they do Southern California, right? So they do, LA and San Diego, and maybe they do Phoenix, and that tour security guy can get a feel for who they are and what they're about and how they do business and see if they're a fit. Because sometimes they may be good at the job, but they're not a fit for that particular company.
Right.
And, you may have a guy who is, super cerebral, and he talks to a guy from a company that's security by the pound. That doesn't translate, right? Because their TTPs and their presence is very different for that person, and vice versa. It could be the other way around. So getting a feel for the job and then getting a feel for that group or that company, because basically that's a team and you're going to be operating within whatever their standards are and whatever their protocols are. So when they write up advances for a tour, it might be a 20-page document on how they do stuff, and then you're implementing it. If that doesn't jive with you or you don't respect it, you're probably not a good fit for that group. Right. Personality type's another component. So I would recommend that first. And then after that, if that doesn't work out, then to start to talk directly to, promoters, start to talk directly to tour managers, production managers, because they're at some point they're going to be in a pinch and they're not going to have a guy and they're going to need somebody. And you're going to be the only MFer that is in their Rolodex, and they're going to call you and say, hey man, are you still interested in this? And if you are, they may fly you right out and you may start with little to no experience, which it's great. It's a great opportunity for that person. It's a horrible thing in the industry that it doesn't have regulation and oversight. But at the end of the day, if you're looking for an opportunity, it's a field with very limited oversight. So it's a great way to penetrate the industry.
Yeah, man. No, that's great. That's awesome. Start out volunteering, get on the production side, you guys. It's another way into, because, we want to learn how to serve the demographics we think we want to serve from the outside looking in, but get some insight. With that insight and that sweat equity will come relationships in the industry, and relationships are literally the equity that gets you everything, right? And then, latch on to the guys that come through, man. Be a solid dude, master your grid square, so they can have the faith that you might be able to do that for them, and then work those relationships. That's awesome advice, man.
Yeah. Speaking of grid squares, if they ask you to go get a box of grid squares, go ahead and do it. If you need 100 yards of flight line, go ahead and get that 100 yards of flight line.
Get that BFA for the M9, man. Yeah, you'll find it. No, that's great stuff, man. What are you looking for if someone, personality traits wise? I mean, I always say I can teach anyone tactics, but character is really what I'm primarily concerned with, temperament and personality. But what are you looking for if someone comes to you and is like, hey, I really want to join your team or be in this touring game?
And we've shifted a lot over the years because we had more of like a soft kind of group of guys, and that shifted over the years. And shockingly, they're less appropriate for a lot of the stuff that we're dealing with. So number one is
doesn't mean soft like soft.
Special operations forces guys, SF, SEALs, Marine, MARSOC, stuff like that. But basically normal dudes who are very motivated, who are very flexible, who can deal with a lot of different conditions. That's everything, because we have me back up a second. You live the life of the person you're protecting. So also another thing that you have to understand is that your job is to make sure nothing happens. And the net result of nothing happening is nothing. So you produce nothing. And so you have to be able to articulate that in a way that they will understand your value, even though you produce nothing. So guys that are able to see a situation, adjust to it, and then present it to people or ideas to people, those guys are invaluable for us. So people that are flexible, people that are smart, and people that are capable, that's everything for us. And if they have that mental fortitude to just push through certain situations. Another thing I would say, in addition to flexibility, is probably a sense of humor, because the silliness that goes on in the circles that we're in, the things that have no relationship with reality, they're constant. And so if you don't have a sense of humor,
they're constant. You guys, I just want you guys to really hear this, because I get new guys on the job all the time, and they're like their minds are constantly blown, and I'm like, hey bro, same circus, different clowns. It's not weird. I got multiple details doing the same thing. Like, this isn't weird, but this is the world we live in, you know?
Yeah, there doesn't have to be a correlation to reality. Like, literally whatever's going on in their head, they're going to try to materialize in the real world. And so you're going to be a part of that. And in fact, you essentially, and I know people don't like to hear this, but you become an enabler. You're the one that's helping them get things, do stuff. And hopefully, if you're a smart person, you're helping them make the best choices. And this comes back to the personality profile, because if I know how you think and how you operate, then I can present options to you in a certain way.
Yeah. Yeah. 100% in a certain way that's tactically favorable for us. And
100%.
100% can increase longevity and, you know, and make it so we can have a successful operation. That's good. So wait, it's not like the dude's like sub-second draw. It's not like, his hard skills.
Yeah. It's funny because I love the hard skills. I absolutely love the hard skills. Yeah. You talk about, shooting and fighting and driving and all of these things, breaching. It's sexy. It's fun. And I'm super passionate about it. But the job is 90+% choreography and soft skills. It's 100%. It's organization, it's structuring things, it's putting things in place, it's walkthroughs, it's written advances, verbal advances, it's seeing small details and figuring out how they're going to impact you. I think about all the details that I've been on. And if I just talk about America, I've never pulled my gun out in America on a detail. Now, Oconus, that's a different story because it's a different condition. But, most of the time, nothing happens. And that's actually probably one of the problems with what we do, is that a lot of guys can survive in the realm because nothing happens 99% of the time. And our job is to be insurance for the 1%. And in that process, a lot of people who shouldn't be in the job in the first place, they end up in it, and they can stay a long period of time where they don't belong. Also, complacency, as you know, is a massive issue because, again, nothing happens. And if I've done this 900 times and, I've had one or two instances, like, nothing's going to happen, we're good. You can't be that way. So you have to mentally condition yourself, and even developing the skills for that is a whole nother conversation, where literally as I'm doing something that's really boring and monotonous, in my head, I'm thinking, what if this happened? What if that happened? How would I deal with this? And it's a way of kind of keeping yourself engaged in what's going on.
Engaged and a few steps ahead for when it finally actually does happen, man. No, that's huge. Everything you said was huge, man, because I think too, a lot of guys may fall victim. And this is why the slogan for this whole brand is, it's more than just a job, it's a lifestyle. Because there's a lot of guys in this game, I think, that might think that, nothing happening is a sign of competence. And I think sometimes it's just that nothing's happened. Like, you just haven't really been tested yet. You know what I mean? And
true story.
Yeah.
And I know people don't want to admit that. That's one of the things I know I've pissed off a lot of people by saying the truth. The truth really irritates people, especially people that are lucky and haven't really created anything themselves. They don't want that being said, but that's a fact, especially in the entertainment side. I think it's a fact.
100%. Yeah, man. And our game is exactly what you said. Trying to live in that imaginary world of what could go wrong in order to detect it before it happens, so that we're there to catch it, stop the bleed, whatever it is, before it happens. And man, you ever hear someone be like, well, that's not going to happen or something like that? Like, they can't be on your team. Like they're just not the guy.
Yeah, there's it's a fact. There's a thing called normalcy bias, right? And in normalcy bias, that's exactly what happens. You say, well, planes don't fly into buildings on September 10th, and then September 11th happens. Oh, wait a second. So you have to be thinking through all that stuff, and we could have a 2-day long discussion on action versus reaction and the pre-planning and moment of recognition and moment of action, and trying to kind of reduce that time between those 2 points. But all of that requires training. All of that requires an understanding what's going on. All of that requires being kind of plugged in to what's going on in your environment and trying to get an early idea on that problem before it unfolds. Because once it unfolds and you're on your heels, that's a bad place to be fighting from.
And I think too, it should be noted that like a lot of all this stuff we're talking about, guys, is soft skills. Like my ability to walk in that room and be like, okay, there's the curtain. Here are our seats. How many paces from here to here? Like, where's my next hard position? Like all that stuff. This is all soft skill centric, and the other side of the brain where we talk to civilians and moms and stuff, it's like, hey, if you can really master these soft skills of personal protection and thinking this way, moving this way, you can live a safer pattern of life and hopefully also be a few steps ahead. When that dude does pop that curtain, you've already thought through it, cut down on all that. Is this happening time? I can't believe this is happening time. And you can just implement, and that's the good stuff, man. It's a thinking man's game. It really is.
If you do it right, that's a fact.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with that. If you do the job right, it should be a thinking man's game. Your job is based on what's happening in your head, how you see your environment, and how you can implement those skills when things unfold and under stress, right? Because if you can't do it under stress, you're not valuable.
It ain't worth anything. What would you say about like the business of touring? How does that differ, from, your, high net worth family that you're just rolling with in an ongoing format? Any pointers and considerations on that?
Yeah, there are massive differences between high profile people that are in entertainment and high net worth people or executives or dignitaries. And with the celebrities, one is that a lot of people know them. So if you're looking after Madonna and you're taking her to Abuja, Nigeria, every single person that you pass by will know who she is. Whereas with a family or with an executive, almost nobody knows who they are. So everybody's going to get an idea on you, number one.
Right.
Number two is that there are kind of battles that occur, right? And when I say that, what I mean is if I'm entrusted with protecting this person, I want to be low signature, low profile. I want to go under the radar, because if you don't know I'm there, you can't attack me, right? But there's another group of people that are tasked with promoting that person and their presence, namely a publicist, right? And that publicist wants everybody to know every step of the way where they're going to be, what they're going to be doing. They want still cameras, they want video, they want chaos, the exact opposite of what you want. Yep. And now we're both hired to do opposing things. So managing that and giving them the exposure they need in controlled spaces, very, very different than any other realm, even in sports, when you start to talk about film or music. So there are a lot of factors that change with their visibility. And then there are other things that become norms. Like, let's say you're traveling internationally and you're traveling through airports and you have a drug user, right? Your celebrity's a big drug user. Are you going to take their bag and carry it through the international airport? And when you do, and something is found in that bag, are you going to be like, yeah, it's cool, I'm ready to go to prison for this person because they handed me this thing and I knew I had it and, I didn't want to say anything. And so now you're going to prison in Russia for having these drugs. Are you good with that? Right? A lot of things to think about on the celebrity side that don't exist in other realms.
Yeah, 100%. And the money flow, like the cash flow too, for the detail, it's like, It's a production. What level of production is it?
Yes. And then, that's again, specific to entertainment. Is it rock? Is it hip hop? Is it pop? Is it like kiddie stuff? Is it country? Is it even in each of these genres is a whole nother kind of social ecosystem, and their ways of doing business or what would be akin to like TTPs completely different. You think it's the same. It's not. They're different. They see things differently. They operate differently. I can work in one group of people and they hate Marines. They hate law enforcement. I work in another group of people and they revere them. So, being able to operate and talk to them about certain things or talk about your past or get some buy-in on what you're doing is very different. In fact, you'd be probably well advised to not talk about certain things with a lot of the clients in entertainment, because you'll set them off or you'll separate yourself from them in a way that you can't recover from. So, entertainment's just a different animal altogether. And the learning curve, I think, is pretty steep, especially coming out of the military.
Like your ability to understand who and what, like it really kind of goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning, those social dynamics, your ability to understand who you're dealing with, what their value structure is, and be able to gain cultural equity. These are like survival skills in this game. Any pitfalls that take dudes out on tour that come to mind? Guys on tour, close quarters.
The number one thing that I see is them thinking they're a rock star themselves, as we talked about. And number two is giving critical things away or not treating key players like wives or kids or managers in a certain way. They fall left and right with being nasty toward those people or not respecting them in a certain way, or not seeing that person is intentionally setting up pitfalls for them and they don't ID it. And that happens frequently because, it's almost like disinformation where I'm putting something in this tube and I'm seeing where it pops out. And, I give you this little piece of information, which is fictitious, and I wait to see. And then all of a sudden, this other guy who only knows you starts saying the same thing that I told you. Now I know. And so, family members, managers, friends, agents who don't know you, don't know what you do, none of the people really understand the job that they hired you for. That's the truth. And so, they'll test you and they'll do all kinds of quirky stuff. And they may not like you for the way you look, for what you're wearing, for what your background is, but somebody else brought you in and they are trying to dethrone you. And so they'll set out traps for you. And it's your job to be able to ID those traps, right? They're booby traps that if you just walk over, you're done. It's so you can't think that everybody's a friendly, and it's not to be paranoid. It's just the realities of that environment.
Yeah, 100%, man. I call them the royal court, man, because it's like one of those movies, where it's like everyone's vying for power. You got to pay homage to these different people, and it's a very dangerous kind of social environment to navigate. You try to get these people have been friends with this VIP billionaire cool kid for so long. They've seen people come and go. They don't want you to rise to power. There's all these dynamics. So you really have to be careful at how you navigate those relationships. I've seen that take a lot of guys out, man. It's just dangerous,
Yeah. The other side of that is that those people can be force multipliers for you too, because if you identify who they are and you develop that relationship and you figure out how they work, as we talked about with personality profiles. Yeah. Now, if I need that person to act, me asking them, they're going to question it. They're going to look at it from a different perspective. But if that friend makes the suggestion to them, the chance of them doing it, it's extremely high. I'm not going to promote my book.
You already have it.
Now,
you guys already written a book.
If you look at this, right, you have to find a way to not directly, to indirectly influence. Yeah. And each camp, it's different, and the people are different, and what they like, what motivates them, what their objectives are, those are different. There are certain commonalities, but if you don't figure that stuff out, you're not going to be around long, right?
Yeah, man. I've heard it called EP ventriloquism. It's that subversive social engineering that just keeps us where we want to be, man. And that's the Jedi stuff of this game, man. It's awesome.
It is. Here's the thing, though. The thing is, if you want to do your job, if you want to do a good job, and you really want to serve those people, you have to do that. It's not like a manipulation that's malicious. It's not like I want my way. This is what I want to do. In fact, most of the things that I'm advocating for actually aren't good for me. They're not fun for me. I don't want to do those things. Right. But it's what's going to put our client in the best spot and give them the highest probability of success. And so, these Jedi mind tricks and in these kind of engineering kind of situations that we get into, they're necessary to achieve your objective. That's the truth.
Mm-hmm. No, 100%. That's, your principal wants to live his life. He wants to do his things. He wants his media hits. He wants to go to these restaurants in bad neighborhoods in the Middle East when it's not time to do it. And your ability to be able to move chess pieces and get these things done, get access to that person that you might need, or steer them in another direction, really does come down to your ability to play this game. And also, when you inevitably make a mistake and you're on the blotter, he's going to look over to his buddy that he's known from third grade that goes on tour with him everywhere and say, what do you think about Byron? I mean, like, this dude has stupid headphones on all the time and he made a bad turn yesterday. Like, and that guy's going to be like, yeah, Byron's a douchebag. Or he's going to be like, you know what? I think he's all right. I think we'll let him grow into the position a bit. And you get another breath,
Yeah, it's all of that. It's all of that in a nutshell. In fact, actually, you touched on something that's kind of funny because when you talk about going to, a restaurant in the Middle East, I had a client who decided that during the war, he wanted to go to Syria and do this thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're a rock star. You can't just go to Syria. So literally what I had to do was present, okay, instead of going to Syria, what we're going to do is we're going to go over here to Erbil, and there's a 5-star hotel. And I know a bunch of dudes who I operated there with. Yeah. We're going to get you a detail, through the Peshmerga, and we're going to stay in this hotel. You have nice dinners. And then this group of guys will take over here and we'll go do this thing and come back, and you'll still be able to talk about it and all that, whatever. But you're not going, you're going to live in the lap of luxury in Erbil instead. And so those are the kinds of things that, you make that comment, like going to, a dinner in a bad neighborhood in the Middle East. That's the norm. That stuff happens all the time.
100%, man. That's the game. No, I love it. You mentioned here systems and strategies. What would you say about that, brother?
Well, I mean, that's what you're falling back on. So there are some things that are structure based, right? And we talked a little bit about advancing, right? And when we talk about advancing and we look at certain systems that you utilize for what you advance, how you do walkthroughs, what information you present, what you don't, right. That's huge. And then even with things like, threat vulnerability assessments or risk assessments, those 3 separate different things, those processes, those systems that you use, that you fall back on, those are systematic things that it's a plug and play, right? And then you make the adjustment after you're done plugging everything in, you see what you have, and then you make the modifications on the back end. But for us, the systems portion is the easiest part to teach to guys, which is also why guys want to grab it and run, after they leave the company, because you have this system in place. The thing for me, and I'm sure you have some of this in you from the Marine Corps, but everything has a process. Everything has kind of like, okay, here's an advance, here's a restaurant advance, an FBO advance, here's a this advance, here's a that advance, here's a waiver for a bad barricade, here's a, whatever. So we've got these 572 templates, but what they just produce is a way of getting information and then looking at it. And then we kind of extract the information that it provides and make the real kind of final plan that encompasses everything together. And then how we're going to kind of adjust on the fly to certain things that are likely to occur.
So you don't just work out and get on a jet and go with clients,
it's funny you should say that, because in fact, I wrote this current book. I had written field manuals, and everybody's like, dude, that's not sexy.
That's
you know what? The job is not sexy. It's a job. I'm not the rock star. I try to convey that, but on the current book that's out now, Protective Perspective, it's literally for those people that need that visual thing of what it is you're doing in the process that it goes through. But no, I don't get paid to go work out and stand next to a celebrity so that the paparazzi can photograph me. In fact, if I have my way, I'm not in the photograph, but that's another conversation. But yeah, a lot of planning, a lot of structuring, a lot of conversations, a lot of emails, a lot of walkthroughs. And that too gets monotonous. You can only do them for so long. And for me, it's 25 years before it gets old. But at the end of the day, I still have to do it. I have to be consistent. I have to be disciplined about it. I have to get it done. And what I found talking about systems is that if I have to produce this document and share it with the team, it forces me to go through it. Otherwise, if I'm in charge of the detail, I'm the team lead, I don't have to produce it to anybody because I'm in charge. Right. But if I make that part of the protocol that you must produce this particular document and share it with the team, and it must be done within, X amount of hours of being on site, it forces me to be that guy that does that thing, even when I don't want to. And that's a good check and balance that I put in place many, many years ago.
Yeah. And I think it's like the systems, first thing I'd say is yeah, guys, like there's a lot of like schoolboy stuff that goes into this. Like you should be able to produce a solid advance, the right type of advance. You guys should have systems in place to get repeatable results and products that you can all work off of as a team. Like EP is more than just really being a bouncer on tour and things like that. And I really want to make sure people understand that. And then on the leadership side of it too, man, I wanted to ask you, what would you say about creating winning teams? Because as a detail leader or a CEO or PPO, you have multiple teams out there in the field operating very often without your supervision. Are there any tactics or systems that you use to make sure those guys are executing at the level that you would want for your brand, that you've seen that work really well?
Yeah. So for us, we have a process on the end, right? So we have a course that they go through. We have an OJT that they do. Then they come in as a second or third on a detail. And then eventually they get their own detail. So there's that to kind of see how they do business and establish what our protocols are and make sure they carry them out. Number one. And then number two, from a distance, I'm still talking to the guys on a regular basis. I'm still checking in with them. And I'm also talking to the client. And one thing guys don't understand is that if they screw up, I'm going to be the first guy to know, because the manager is going to call me. The client's going to text me and say, "Hey, your dude just did this." And to be fair, sometimes the guy did nothing wrong. It was an interpretation thing, and they didn't understand what he was doing. But a lot of times they're giving information that's really pertinent. Or I'm going and saying, "Hey, Byron, send me the advanced site survey that you did on such and such a place yesterday." Mm-hmm. And if you can't send it to me, it's a problem. You should be able to hit me up on that. And in fact, with some guys, in terms of oversight, we'll be saying, "Hey, CC me on this thing every day. You do CC me on this." But phone calls, meetings, and then also your team leaders who are out there talking to them on, "Hey, what's going on with Byron? How's he doing? Is he getting along with everybody? How's his work ethic? Is he doing good with the 20-hour days, 6 days a week? Is there anything we need to do? Hey, I'm going to have a chat with him next week. What do you think is important to talk to him about? What do you see out there?" So, establishing those supervisory kind of roles, and then leaning on the supervisor to get your information about what's happening for the guy at the task level, right? At the level of execution. That's been really big for us. And then having, an annual or biannual meeting where we sit down and talk and go through stuff. And sometimes guys will have a different perspective who are new versus a guy who's been around forever. Yeah. And we get a lot of good feedback because they are trying to think through ways of dealing with the problems that they faced. And they're a different head, right? So sometimes in those meetings that, we're doing kind of debriefs and talking, the guy that's newest will come with something that I just never thought of or nobody else on the team thought of. So that kind of open line of communication, the meetings, the conversations, the emails back and forth, and then kind of a debrief at the end of the year, doing something fun, going out, having a good time, building camaraderie. You see these things come out. Also, you see how those guys interact with other team members when it's guys that they haven't operated with, and they get kind of tossed in who they should be team members with, who it should be good with. And you see kind of if they're going to have a dick measuring contest or what they're going to be doing, so that personality a little better.
Yeah, no, that's good, man. I'm always, I know there's a lot of guys that listen that are always trying to understand those things too, man. And what I really hear you saying is communication and accountability. And, as leaders, be focusing on the leadership things, the communication, the accountability, and attacking the culture. Set the culture early as they come up through the pipeline as to how we do biz. Lean on your next level of leadership to make sure those things are getting done well. But then the communication part, because you need to understand like the look, the feel, the attitude, the social level of health that they have on task,
That actually, you hit on a really important point, because if I build a thing over 25 years and we're doing 30 or 40 tours and we're doing 3 or 4 films and we're doing a dozen executives and some governmental stuff, if we're doing that and I built this over 25 years, one guy can come in and ruin relationships that have existed for a long period of time. So one thing to understand is, that vetting process is so significant. If I have a guy who's an alcoholic, then I deal with all the same problems as an alcoholic does. If I have a guy who just can't, handle himself and he's going out and getting hookers all the time, I got that problem. If he's got a gambling problem, I have that problem. If he's got problems at home with his wife and kids or whatever, I have that problem. So whatever those people have that I bring in to work for me, I have all of those problems. And it's potentially detrimental to my company. And so that's one of the things, like, we found, don't keep problems around for a long time. Either you're a fit or not a fit. Do it right, do it nice, be kind. Hey, look, we found that you're not a fit for this, or the opposite. Hey, you're doing a great job. We're going to promote you, keep you going. You're a perfect fit for this. So guys have to get recognized, acknowledged, and or cut out, because as you know, with an organization, you let a cancer in, and it's bad.
Yeah, man. Dude, this is good stuff. I love it. I love it, man. Well, another question just on the tactics and principles, and we'll get into these books you've written and some of this work that you've done, man. What would you say about kind of the mindset of when a guy's going to work, you know, in this industry? What kind of mindset, what types of things should be going through his mind?
You know, for me, as I mentioned earlier, flexibility is the biggest thing. So thinking about how you would deal with different circumstances, in different degrees or severity of issues, and how you can mitigate something. And I'm looking at things and I say, if X happens, I'm going to do Y. And then I present different scenarios. So the mindset has to be, I'm coming in, I'm here to solve problems and serve the client. That's first. And I have to have the capability to do it. And I have to be turned on and focused to do that. So the mindset has to be very different than if you were out by yourself having a beer in your neighborhood. I think it has to be vigilant, and you have to be careful to not be hyper vigilant all the time, because you cannot sustain that. And that's one of the things. I get guys who are really good, but they just can't keep that level of intensity mentally, even though physically they may be doing nothing. It smokes them so quick. So being able to toggle in environments, understand your risk level. So I don't need to be hyper vigilant, you know, when we're in a controlled space with 3 or 4 layers of security, right? Those concentric rings that are already around me, I can relax a little bit more. I still look and I still think, you know, but I'm aware, but I'm not hyper vigilant, you know.
Right. And matching that environment is going to keep you the camouflage you need to be in that environment without negatively impacting things and getting rejected from that environment in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and as I'm sure you've heard many times, you know, the adage of just look cool, and that's not to say like to be a cool guy and I need to be. It's to keep yourself calm. It's to make sure that you're not presenting a certain image. It's to be relaxed. It's to be confident. It's to be present, and that's another a challenge. And I'll tell you, even for me, having done this forever, it's a challenge for me. Is to be in the moment, because when I look at what I'm doing, I'm thinking about the lessons learned of the past, and I'm looking forward to what could potentially happen. Both of those spaces are not in the present. And so taking lessons from the past, thinking about what could happen in the future, but then being present to be able to implement it, right? And we talked about that something happens, you know, you need that moment of recognition and that moment of action to be very short. Yep. So in order to do that, I need to be in the moment, right? My response is going to be way better, and my early idea will be there. So that's another thing in terms of mindset, trying to force yourself to be to the present when you can, and adjust to, you know, the environment that you're in. Yeah. And the entertainment realm, they're going to take you through all kinds of environments, and some are going to be very uncomfortable, right? You're going to go, you know, I'm a straight dude, so I am not particularly comfortable when you send me into a gay bar with a bunch of guys that are greased up, flexing and then rubbing on people. That's not my environment, so I'm not used to that environment. And with that said, I have to operate in the environment. My job doesn't change at all. Right. I have to still do the same things. I have to adjust to it. Again, flexibility. You know, my job's the same. I'm good. Now I'm in this realm. I got to do what I got to do. Doesn't matter, you know, what my opinion is. This is where I'm at. And you're going to go in and out of those realms. And you're going to go into a realm where I was talking about. You go, oh, we're going to Syria. Like, wait a second, you're a rock star. Why are we going to Syria? And you're going to go to other realms where no one's around and you can't have this hard, heavy posture. You need to relax. You need to go at the furthest distance that you can to do your job still, so they don't have to introduce you, so nobody feels like you're in their space, you know, in that ebb and flow. But again, most of that comes from, you know, the mindset, like where you see yourself, what you see your role as being. And a reminder from my guys always is they don't know what your job is. You can't wait for them to tell you what they want or where they want you to be or what they want you to be doing. You have to do that yourself. You have to task organize yourself, and you have to assign yourself a function.
Mm-hmm. There's so many titles, man. They don't know what your job is. EP Jedi. You know what I'm saying?
No.
I love it.
But why would they? You know, like if you asked me about, you know, certain functions of the music industry, like if we talk about Pro Tools, right? This software that people are using to manipulate what you're hearing. I have no idea what it takes to program that or what the inputs are or even how it functions. So if I hired a guy to do Pro Tools, I'll just say, you know,
make it sound good.
You have this experience. Yeah, go out there and do the thing you do. And that's the case in our world. All they know is what they see. They don't really know what your job is. So they just know they see this dude and he's a big dude and he's standing next to the artist. And therefore, that's what the job is, to be there and be an intimidator. And in fact, the job's the opposite of that. But they don't know that and they don't see what's going on behind the scenes. And the truth is, you know, unless you educate them, they're never going to know. And there's value in showing them bits and pieces of what you do. There's going to be a tolerance because the shit will bore them. Most people don't want to hear everything you have to say about security. They're going to be sleeping. But if you show them little glimpses, they become curious and they also start to develop a certain respect for you that otherwise they wouldn't. If you're just a big dude, I don't really respect you. But if you're doing all these little things behind the curtain that I didn't know you were doing, all of a sudden I got a little more buy-in from this person because they're like, oh, wait a second. I didn't know that.
Right. And
that's cool.
This improves the quality of my mission. Like this empowers me to do my mission. This improves the quality of the overall product I'm able to render or that my teams can render. Having this guy here, you know, man, when you can start showing them how you positively impact their thing, you know, bangarang, you know, you're doing good work, man.
It's massive. They can feel it. They can see it. And guess what? That person doing the job, whoever that provider of protection is, they'll feel it. They'll feel the buy-in from the other people. And conversely, if they're not doing a good job or something happens, they're going to feel that, yes, everybody's going to distance from them. Even if they didn't do anything wrong, the perception of that is everything because you're talking about a realm where everything is smoke and mirrors. So they're not digging deep to find out what reality is. They don't care. It's the optics of something that they're worried about. That's what they get paid to do is to create a feeling using these false things. They create a feeling in people that's fleeting, but people pay to have that feeling, to listen to music, to watch a film, whatever it is. And so that's the realm that most of the people operate in. So just the idea that you could have done something is enough to make you pariah, and you will feel it immediately.
100%. Yeah, you'll feel them bring you in or you feel them push you out. This is the good stuff. I hope you guys are taking notes, man.
Also known as proxemics, right? Like you absolutely feel that happening. People drawing, pulling toward you, people starting to kind of push away from you. It's a real thing and it happens. And it doesn't matter if you were right or wrong. It happens and it's going to affect it. And so you're going to have to take corrective action if the bad side happens. And if the good side happens, maybe that's the time to present, you know, what it was that you were worried they wouldn't accept, you know, because that's the time that they're going to give you a favorable response.
Yep. Man, that's a whole nother podcast, man. It doesn't matter if you're right or wrong, man. You know, it's like, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. It's not what you know, it's what the client believes. Yeah. You want to go home. You
know, guys, this is why when I say to guys, like, it's hard to transition from the military, they don't get this stuff because, you know, we're looking at what's right and what's wrong. Right. And when you come into this realm, no one cares what's right or wrong. It's the optics of the thing, and you know what your standing is within that group is based on the optics, and that, you know, that power figure, whoever it is, if it's the artist themselves or if it's a manager or whoever it is, what their perspective is of you. So this is something that's very difficult to articulate, and we can be talking about this all day, but the guys listening, unless they've been in it, they don't really get the depths of this, you know.
It's so important. Yeah, gents, this is the good stuff, man. 100%. So, man, huge demonstration of value, lots of wisdom already in this episode. Let's talk a little bit about these books and then into what it is you're working on now. You know, All Access, Protection and Humanity. These sound like deep titles, man. Protective.
Yeah. So well, it gets there. The first one happened because when I came from the Marine Corps into the protective world, I had guys who were giving me bad information, who were pushing me out. I was the only American on a Brit team with a very, very high profile client. And there was nothing that I could find to read on EP relative to touring. So, all the books that are out there and all the training that I had been done was really for an executive or maybe a diplomat, right? So, I had done all this stuff at the time, read all the stuff at the time, almost none of it translated. So after a while in the business, we had these guys who were asking me like, hey, what do I do? How is it best to approach this situation? Lots of questions because I had about 10 years in. This is about 15 years ago. So I decided to write a book on basically what the general broad stroke TTPs are for tour security. Who are the key players? What do they do? What's your role? What are the things in your environment? Nomenclature. What does your day look like? What's the timeline like? What are your responsibilities? What do you need to bring with you for clothing? What are the physical needs, and what should you be able to do? What are the hard skills and soft skills? Right. So I put that out as the first book in tour security, and that was called All Access. It's very simple, very basic book, and for people watching, they can have a look at what the book is like, right? So the book is thin and it gets into stuff. It gets into some things that are a little bit deeper. I don't know if you're familiar with Carver for a threat matrix, but that comes from, initially the intelligence community. Now a bunch of governmental entities use it. So it gets into some of that stuff, but just kind of a cursory overview of it. But to give guys an understanding of what you should know and how you should be able to do it, even things that are really simple, but no one really talks about is, setting up a credential board, right? Passes. How do passes work, and how do you establish that, and what should they look like, and where do they go? Like simple stuff. So it's not meant to be, something that's, crazy advanced. It's meant to give people a view into that world.
But those fundamentals make all the difference. When you got people walking by you with different color passes and you're playing Russian roulette by stopping them, you're going to wish you had that board with all the plastics. You're going to wish you had that one piece makes all the difference.
If you screw up once, you might not get an opportunity to screw up again. So it's a pretty big deal. So I had written a book for a governmental agency on force instruction, basically, mostly related to use of force and defensive tactics. And then that didn't get put out because I had to deal with that organization. So that went away. That will actually come out in a civilian format in June. We'll talk about that in a minute. That's called Underpinning. That's another story. But the book that was out about 2 years ago is called Protection for and from Humanity. Now, this book, of all the books that I've written, is the book for anybody that is interested in this realm to buy. This gets into all the different ideas and concepts and strategies for a security professional. So when you start to look at stuff, this gets into doing assessments and identifying different things and simple stuff sometimes like Cooper's color codes, or getting into, combat hunter program stuff, the baseline anomalies and things like that, to getting into, motives for human compromised mice and some of those things. It gets into SWOT and carbon analysis and observation and proxemics and all that stuff. But then it gets into very specific things with layered security approach and shooting and driving and fighting and psychological components and the value of yes. So it's it's all encompassing. It's a really good book for people that in particular don't have a lot of military service or a lot of time on, say, a law enforcement SWAT team, stuff like that. That book is a no nonsense, no frills field manual. That's what it is. And so if you're interested in that, you're serious about that, you're like a security nerd, it's perfect. But most people aren't. And so what happens is people are like, dude, you didn't have any photos. I didn't see this. I didn't see that. Like, no, they're just diagrams.
It's not about that. It's the thesis.
Yes, but they want the sexy, right? That's what they want. Sexy sells. It's the field manual's like, dude, what do I do with this? Like, well, one, try to learn from it by reading it and trying to apply some of the strategies in there. Or if you really can't understand anything, then you pull the papers out and you use them to wipe with, if that's what it's got to be. Or it's tinder for making a fire, if that's what it's got to be. But
as a dictionary, as a cheat sheet, bro. When you get some weird, your client wants you to do something, you're like a little squibbly about it. Like, you go in the view, look it up in the book, man, and homework.
That's the thing, is there's so much information in such a small space. No one gave me these things. Like it's a collection, right? You over the years of doing things, you acquire information and knowledge, and you figure out what works, what doesn't work, why it works, why it doesn't work. And you start to accumulate these things. And so the idea of this is to shortcut the process for people. Like I'm asking, especially with the first book,
what did I not know? Having gone through these EP courses, having gone through PSD with Blackwater and groups like, what did I not know? And there was a ton of stuff I didn't know that nobody told me, nobody showed me.
Yeah.
So that was the approach that I took. Now, the book that's out now, Protective Perspective, looks like this. And now this is sexy.
Yeah, right.
The other books are like clean
and everything, you know.
I was about to tell you that, actually. You beat me to the punch. So, I had these other books that are white with a little black and a little red, but this one is the black book with the hand pulling the strings, right?
I love it, man. It's so good. I wish I came up with it. It's so good.
And you can see the backside of it, right? The artistic version of the hands in the crowd there. A little weird though. Some people think it's Auschwitz, but it's not, guys. It's an audience. So yeah, this book is all about the pictures. It's all about showing those things behind the scenes and how things work. And when we look at stuff, something like this, right? Visual cues and how I give information without, talking to somebody, right? I got gaff tape. I got red or pink gaff tape that's high visibility. I put it at eye level. I put it down on the ground for an emergency. So now you can see it at eye level walking around, or you can look down on the ground because something's happening high up or there's smoke in the air and you're crawling. What does it say? Well, it says GTFO, get the fuck out. So I know that that's an outward leading path to get me out of there, because for people that don't know, we work in mazes. We work in these big mazes. Yeah, that's what it is. So, we got pictures for people. I'll give you another one that I think probably most people don't know. We're looking at here some medical stuff. We're looking at things like deconfliction. Like most people are like, deconfliction, what are you talking about? Like, I'm putting these emergency lights on the stage and they're blue in color. And when these blue beacon lights go off, what does that mean? If there's blue lasers going through the crowd, it's just part of the show, right? So I have to deconflict it with what exists there. I mentioned this before, but this isn't one of them. So personality profiles, right? So if I look at that guy's wheel, we have truck drivers, I have 30 truck drivers. What does that tell me about that truck driver's personality if he's got 8-inch spikes coming? Yeah, I know a little bit about him just by looking at that, right? Or let me see if I can find one that's maybe more pertinent.
It's one of the reasons I waited so long to get tattoos, exposed tattoos. I was like, that's gonna.
Absolutely. So right here, you're looking at the inside of a tour bus. How am I going to live on a tour bus? What's it look like to be in this little coffin bunk? And you may know from being on a ship, right? You're in this rack and you're 6 racks high or something. Yep. So on tour buses, what do those look like? What's it like to live in those spaces? On a jet, what's it like? How do things work? How do you go to the bathroom? What do you do? Or like on a tour bus, you can't drop a deuce. That doesn't work. Knowing those little kind of things will save you a lot of public embarrassment and keep you from being ostracized, hopefully. But this has, or what?
Or fired.
I would say in many tours, if you dropped a deuce on a tour bus, you'd be gone.
Yeah,
that's just unacceptable.
I've been on private jets where if you fall asleep and fart on accident, you got to wake up and put the hand sanitizer naps in front of the vents. You got to stop the bleed, man.
Yeah, and this is the reality, right?
Yeah, so boy.
You say that and people are like, ha ha ha, but like, no, man, that's a real deal. Yeah, so this book is basically structured in a way where people get a peek behind the curtain, which is part of the title. So you get a photo, and then you've got a little summation kind of that tells you a little bit about that area. And we do a pretty broad kind of gamut of photos and information, but it's a little sexier because people have that visual content, right? And people remember what they see visually. Like on average, 3 days after you look at something, you can remember it at a level of 60% retention for that. Whereas if you're reading something in a book, your retention is way less. So this we found is what people have been interested in seeing, and without giving away, all the really important details, but giving a peek behind the curtain, this book does it.
Nice, man. And that's awesome. Like, that's the stuff that gets me fired up, because that's going to make the industry better, and like you were saying, there was nothing like that when I started the podcast because I was just like I had a couple good mentors that kept me alive. And then I was just like, well, where's the information? Like, how do people get to do this well? And there just wasn't anything. And I was like, I think I'm just going to start having conversations with guys who are out there doing it on here. Obviously, we mind OPSEC, but there's a lot we can talk about. And
but I don't think that's it. That's been an argument for a long time. Here's the deal: I can mention things and talk about things without giving it away.
Right.
And I think the idea that this is TSSCI is ridiculous. It's not. It's really not. This is about day-to-day stuff that you do in your life. Guys who are not even properly trained, who possess these skills, how can you say that, it's some top secret shit? It's not. The reality is it's just unknown. And because it's unknown, you want to act like it's something that it's not. And if you know this, and you're honest and you're not trying to sell sexy, you'll realize that it's normal guy stuff.
Yep.
It's just put into context for what it is that needs to be done. It's basically changing how you view it. So it's the information kind of creates these lenses that you can move in and out of focus with.
Right.
But I agree. There's not enough out there. There's not enough out there. The more that is out there, and this is not a tell-all book. There are not photos of the artist partying and going places and doing stuff. It's not that. It's about security, and it's about the day in and day out kind of job. And all of the books are. And I'm not giving away something they couldn't Google, but they don't know what to Google. Right. So how are they going to Google this thing if they don't even know what it is? If I say deconfliction and you're like, what is that? Afflicted? Is that some type of religious term for somebody that's possessed? Right. Like what is that? You don't know what I'm even talking about. So these books create a sense of awareness, and then you can go investigate further. And if you want to take a 2-week course on one component of this, great, go do it. I can talk to you about driving or shooting or fighting, but it doesn't make you a good driver. It doesn't make you a good shooter. It doesn't make you a good fighter. You have to go put in the work, and it's not secret. Anybody can go do it.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And what I wouldn't say I'm afraid of, but fighting is the guy who has the job and is not implementing any of this, and then makes us all look incompetent. And then I show up and they're like, oh, it's just another like kind of Jack Black guy. He's our security. Blah, blah, blah. And then my relationship with the client is like a girlfriend that just got out of an abused relationship, it's like, you got to like re-educate and construct their whole perception of
100%. The industry norm is exactly what you just articulated. That's the industry norm. And it's embarrassing if people ask you, and like, if you have a valid background that's deep in security, and you come from these other realms doing, higher risk security in crazy places, and you're operating at that level. If you say, oh, I do tour security, I do this kind of entertainment-based security, people like, okay, that's bottom of the barrel. And that's bottom of the barrel because there are a ton of guys that have managed to get in, who have managed to somehow fool people that don't know what the job is. And when they get a taste of the difference, man, I'll tell you, they will never let you go. They will never let you go.
Yep, 100%, man. So guys, be that taste of the difference. And that's what this whole thing is about, bringing honor and respect back to what it is we do. Like, our clients aren't telling their dentists, their doctors, their lawyers, or even their lawnmowers necessarily how to do their jobs. That happens a lot in security, so when you're looked at as a specialist, that happens a little less, hopefully. So yeah, this is good stuff, man. Okay, some closing questions. This has been awesome. Let's see here. Favorite quote, mantra, saying?
Oh man, I think right now, like when I start to look at different things, it's less about quotes for me. It's more about kind of systems and processes. So I'm getting into different scientific components and stuff. So I have all these experiences, and then I don't know how to say articulate them, right? So one would be the Dunning-Kruger effect. Are you familiar with that one?
No.
Basically, in a nutshell, it's you don't know what you don't know. Basically, there's a higher degree of confidence by people that have a limited amount of information versus people that have a high amount of information who know that they don't know that much. And that's the scientific formula for that, right? So that's a really cool one. Yerkes Dodson in performance, right, versus pressure, because you see people perform at different levels, so their thresholds are different for pressure. But trying to find that flow state with the Yerkes Dodson law is another one that has been really fascinating for me, looking at that in depth, and trying to find that perfect point where I have the pressure for performance and I meet it, but I don't go over it so that I'm overtasked, which we kind of talked a little bit about when we talked about, people being in a hyper awareness state for too long.
Yeah. That's a key to like performance and longevity too, man. Like
100%.
And how much pressure do I perceive from the task set in front of me, which probably has to do with my competence as well, and experience. This is very interesting.
Yeah, that's self-imposed, right? Like a lot of times you perceive it a certain way, and let's say, and I'm just going to make it really simple for me. If say it's fighting, and I'm worried about a guy punching me or kicking me or choking me or throwing me. If I've done that a million times, I'm like, okay, so if we're gonna fight, we're gonna fight. Whatever, I'm good. Same with shooting, same with driving. So those high risk, low frequency events can be tamed through training and experience. And even if you don't have the experience and you have a lot of that training, you can offset it. So those things have been cool. Bader Meinhof, it's another one. Are you familiar with Bader Meinhof?
No, man. I'm in school right now.
Yeah, no, it's all good stuff. So instead of just, giving you a bunch of quotes, I give you some systems and people can look this stuff up, and if they're interested in it, they can geek out on it, or not, they can just curb it. But Bader Meinhof basically is something you're very familiar with already, which is that the more that you talk about something or think about something, the more you'll see it in life. For example, if you and I talk about, like, you're gonna go buy a new a new Chevy Tahoe, and you've never had one, you've never looked for them on the road, and we have this conversation about it. We look up online.
It's the coolest, newest car. No one's got it, but then.
Yes, yes. So we have this conversation about. We talk about it for an hour, 2 hours. You go out and drive on the road. What do you think you're going to see? It's not that they weren't there before, but you weren't tuned into that specific thing. And so these phenomena are really important in security and protection, because if we condition our mind, we're going to look and see stuff that otherwise we wouldn't see. Right. And that's a big deal. People don't know what they don't know, right. And they can't see things that they're untrained to see. Right. And then performance wise, okay, so those are the three factors we talked about. Performance wise, knowing kind of where you're at on that bell curve, and then figuring out what offsets it or shifts it.
Yeah.
Those are three important things. So those are areas for me that are interesting versus just giving you a quote.
No, that's awesome. And then on that last one where, like your reticular activation system is now hyper aware of these things, you're looking for these things, then it's having the right tools. If everything looks like, if you got a hammer, everything looks like a nail, that's a problem, but if you have other means to solve those problems in high quality ways, that's where like these books come in handy, and really continuing learning comes in handy, so you're not that officer that's shooting before you should, or you're not that EP guy that's getting physical before you should, when like a social dynamic approach could just solve it. You bust out some verbal judo instead, man, or you just move to you make eye contact with the person, in a way, so this is good stuff. This is mad cerebral. I love it. What's a good habit that you want protectors to consider that makes them better protectors, or even something that makes people better people, that good people are good protectors?
I agree with that statement. But probably for me, being able to deconstruct things and then have those pieces, figure out how each of those pieces works. And this is on every level. So let's say you're going into a restaurant with a client, and you're looking at servers, and they have certain things. They're wearing certain shoes, or they have certain tattoos, or their posture's a certain way, or their eye contact, the way their eyes move. Understanding those things are critical, right? Like, I know how my clients' fans behave and what they look like and what tattoos they have. And
second they hit the store, you're like, oh, we got some found us.
That's it. So I also, if I did my advanced work, I already have a relationship with the restaurant, the general manager, the owner, whoever it is. And then he, assigned Sally to be the waiter. I say, hey, Bob, let's move Sally out, bring this guy in, because Joe Blow over here, he's like 80. He doesn't know who they are. Maybe he's not quite as good, but he's not going to fanboy out on the client and stuff. Sure. So by using deconstruction, it helps me better understand the totality of things, right? So I start to look at stuff and break it down. What are the parts in this particular subject? And this can be any aspect of security. I take it apart, and then I see where else those parts are and see what the corollary value is. And then I bring that into my system in its whole. And that's been a huge, huge tool for me, especially when I go to places that I don't know super well. Maybe I don't speak the language. I don't know the culture that well. I don't have great contacts in that particular country. Those little tiny nuances have made the difference for me.
100%, man. Because you can use a cat's paw in your environment that has the knowledge and the influence and can do it without you even. We're back to the EP Jedi stuff, you know.
It's all about the Jedi stuff, man. It's all about the Jedi stuff. And think about what that prevents. I mean, in terms of not just headaches and problems and keeping your job, but you think about lawsuits, you think about imprisonment, you think about all of these things. I mean, even worse, like you made a bad idea on somebody and you took someone's life that wasn't doing the thing you thought they were. So now you took their life. Now you're in prison. Like it's a mistake.
It is a mistake. Or you step up to someone, you throw a block when you shouldn't. It turns into a big thing. And your clients, like your principals, are looking at you, and now there's a thing happening at the end of the dinner table, or you know, with you, just a thing happening with you. You know, we don't want things happening with us.
Yeah, and that's a better example because those kinds of things unfold all the time, and so these little tiny mechanisms that you can put into place will prevent that.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that particular issue, it can't become something that's exacerbated into something that you end up losing your job over.
Yeah, 100%. Awesome. Good stuff, man. I love it. I hope you guys are taking lots of notes. And then finally, man, you know, how do you want to be remembered, Todd? What's it all for in the end?
That's a good question, man. As I get older and closer to death, I think about that more often. But I certainly want to be seen as someone who took things in and then was able to give things back. So anything that I learned, I try to give back to guys that are coming up. I try to spend as much time as I can conveying or transferring knowledge to another person so that they're not in the same spot I was. I think that's the reality of it, whether it's protection or if it's fighting or, you know, any capacity. Hopefully that's what people remember of me.
Yeah, that's huge. Contribution centric, man. Those are the guys, man. That I you know, even as starting off as like a not that cool 5'9" kind of chubby dude, like I just remember being like, how can I do anything of value? And it's like, dude, your contribution, find a way to contribute, man. That's a way to live life, man. And you've done that in a lot of different, I mean, you know, close to 5 books rolling, you know. I really want to honor you, and it's an honor to be able to have you here and to kind of canonize and crystallize a lot of this stuff and your knowledge. And so, man, it's been awesome. It's an honor.
I appreciate it, man. It's good chat.
Heck yeah. Awesome. Well, do you have anything else you want to say before we lock this thing out? Where can people?
Of course I do. There you go. That's a good one right there. So, our company's website is Tour Protection, TOUR protection.com. The current book's on there. You can get the other books at Amazon and Apple and all of that. I don't recommend the current book in e-format. It's available in e-format. I don't recommend it. It's a visceral experience. It's got really thick pages. It's got like a velvet texture to it. And it's something to experience on a page side by side. The other books I think you can get in e-format, but go there, tourprotection.com for the paperback book, or you can go to the other places for an ebook. And then on Instagram, we just started Instagram, I want to say at the beginning of COVID. Before that, we had 0 social media, which was a beautiful thing. So on Instagram, we're at Tour Training. So, you know, for us, it's touring and traveling and training. Those are the things that we do. So at Tour Training on Instagram and tourprotection.com for all the other stuff. So you get a little sight into some of the clients that we have. If a client lists us, we will list them, which means most of our celebrities are on there, but we don't have any executives because they don't list us. We don't have any dignitaries. We don't have any governmental bodies because they don't list us, which is a great thing.
Yeah, 100%. And it's good to make that distinction so guys don't get, confused and do it the wrong way. So yeah, man, awesome. Well, Todd, dude, great interview, sir, and much love and respect. Glad we're connected. You need anything, you can holler at me, and I'm sure vice versa, man. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yo, ladies and gents, a little cheat code. The latest and greatest. Don't hate us because you ain't are not us. Anyways, check it out. My CAAMCK is a great tool to make any weapon that you have sitting in your safe into much more formidable tool, right? Multiple points of contact, throw a right-on optic on the top. You got a little light there. You got thumb rests. You can adjust them to fit your. So if you haven't seen them, check out CAAMCK. Take those pistols you have in your safe to the next level. Yo, if you're a private security professional wanting to take your game to the next level, go to executiveprotectiontrainingday.com to check out my personal success package for private security professionals. Check it out, executiveprotectiontrainingday.com. And remember, y'all, hard skills do save lives, but soft skills get you paid. Boom. Boom. And to support this podcast, go to executiveprotectionlifestyle.com and contribute to our Patreon account. That Patreon account is what helps me make this podcast possible, contributing to this brand, what we're doing here, making it so that I can bring better guests on, making it so that we can plan more events and just expand the contribution to the private security industry, and also to making America a safer place. Do whatever you can, contribute whatever you can, because it makes all of these things possible. Thanks for those contributions.